always see the smiling. You always got to smile for like a little bit too long. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cackle. This is Entry Point's weekly interview series where we highlight small businesses, startups, and people I just find super interesting and relevant to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Midwest, like Tom. I'm Emily Heinz, founder and managing director of Entry Point. At Entry Point, we partner with economic development organizations and nonprofits to foster inclusive and vibrant communities across the Midwest through research and community-focused programming. We also have like a really cool research report on Ann Arbor coming out on Monday. I finished a week early, so I told everyone else later this month, but it's on Monday. And so if you want to check out any of our research, it's on our website at entrypointmi.com. And today I'm super excited because I have one of my good friends, Tom Frank, who's the founder of Ascend Coaching and Training, joining us. Hey-o!
Hello, how are you? I was going to say later that same day, I could have just probably logged in about 10 minutes later than you.
I know. Okay, so everyone's got to be no one is ready for what's about to happen. The people who know us that are just seeing this as they're scrolling through their feed are like, oh, dear God, what's happening? So Tom and I have been friends for a while.
A while. A hot minute.
I know, a bit. But you've also lived like 900,000 lives. So tell like a little bit, give people like a little bit of background on you and like your career and then
Shortest possible version. Started in advertising in Cincinnati, Ohio. Ran away from the Midwest to Hollywood. I was in the entertainment business, a television producer for years. I was recruited into Internet 1.0, which I'm guessing, Emily, you were probably in diapers. And ended up running a company that went public in Seattle. And after that, I had this fantasy of teaching, which is how I ended up at the wonderful University of Michigan and became your friend when I was running the entrepreneurship program there. Unfortunately, I was also in a commuter relationship at the time. So I ended up back in California.
I would say commuter relationships instead of long distance relationship. That like sounds really serious.
Well, once you get the Delta Diamond, it seems like a commuter relationship.
That's true.
But in any event, when I got back to California, I realized how much I had enjoyed teaching, but also that I wanted to apply what I had learned being an operating executive and help other entrepreneurs. So I started a coaching and training company, and that is how I happily occupy my time at the present.
Yeah. So, and I feel like you have always, like, even as a friend, have like the best advice because you have like such this like broad range of experiences between like the workplace and personal life. Like pretty much anytime I'm having some sort of life crisis, work-wise or otherwise, usually otherwise, I'll just tell Tom and he'll tell me what I need to do with my life. So like, I love the coaching and training aspect. I'm like, of course he would be. Everyone wants to be Tom Frank when they grow up. I know I do.
Really?
I was like, the people who don't are just losers. We don't care about
I was going to say, I have a couple of adult children who might disagree with that.
I don't know. I think they probably agree.
All right. We're not here to talk about me. Let's help some people, or let's talk to your audience.
Yeah. So what is sort of the focus of Ascend? What do you guys do?
Well, we started primarily working with first-time CEOs because there are a lot of experiences that you have as a first-time CEO and you don't necessarily have a trusted source that you can go to. I mean, your board expects things from you, your investors expect things, and frankly, your team does. So I really like being able to be a sounding board or a source of truth for those individuals. What we realized through coaching those people is that they really can use some help developing their own teams. So we then migrated from one-on-one coaching into emerging leadership programs and looking at areas where hopefully we can make both the individuals and their teams better, stronger, and faster.
Yeah. What have you seen? Like, I feel like we talk a lot to, it's funny to be interviewing you, all serious, like,
hopefully we can fix that immediately.
I know. I was like later on. But I feel like we talk to a lot of like CEOs, founders, and certainly over like the last 18 months that we've been doing the Cackle, we've had a lot of these conversations. Like, what do you notice has changed or shifted during this time period where things are kind of like different in the world and like everything's operating differently?
I think the biggest change that we've seen is that there is an enormous shift around overall wellness and also much more of a focus on getting values right early on and trying to build around that type of framework.
Yeah.
Historically, it was always more about when is your product getting to market? Are you hitting your KPIs? Is it your numbers? There seems to be a more serious trend towards what are we building at a human level? Why does that matter or have value? And definitely a much higher amount of emphasis on the people in the companies and how are we going to take care of our people.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with my colleague Molly this morning about just different like workplaces that we see and like how they're putting forward that mental health or the, like family dynamic or whatever as the forefront of like even in job descriptions or like on their websites right out in the open. And then when you see companies that aren't doing that, it's just like such a stark comparison where you're like, man, like, do they not have a culture of like, what is their culture like? And it's kind of like, it's especially when everybody's saying that they're having so much trouble hiring people right now. It seems like it's really important.
It's really important for recruiting, but I mean, everything is connected. So just like there's been a large push towards people saying that they want a more diverse workforce. Well, that's great, but if you don't create an environment where a more diverse workforce is going to thrive, it doesn't really accomplish anything. So it's kind of figuring out what the chain reaction or all of the events are in the environment and building around that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you see a lot of that where people are like, oh, we're focusing on diversity. I'll be like, okay. And then you see them like a year later, you're like, so how's that going? Oh, we forgot about that. Okay.
Yeah, seriously.
You're like, I'm not commenting on all that.
Well, no, I think again, it's because a lot of people just don't know how to implement the things that are going to, in fact, foster a more diverse culture. And you can find studies on, Harvard Business Review or anywhere else that'll tell you that teams that have highly diverse team or, organizations that have highly diverse teams tend to have higher functioning teams and better overall output.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we had talked about like maybe like 6 months ago was kind of like this idea of psychological safety. And I was like really interested in hearing a lot more about this because then I was reading up on it afterwards and I was like, oh my gosh, you do see how critical that is. So maybe talk a little bit about like what psychological safety is and kind of why you think it's so important to the entrepreneurial ecosystem specifically.
Well, it's important because I'm so woke. No, I'm kidding.
You are pretty though.
Look, at its simplest form, I mean, psychological safety is about people feeling like they can bring their authentic selves to work and that their authentic selves are welcome there and that they can comfortably be themselves. And again, tying that back to values, it means the organization has to have norms or rules of the road, if you will, so people feel like maybe if I disagree that I'm not, or I fail at something, I'm not going to get my head cut off. And particularly for entrepreneurs or for organizations that are forming, people don't want to feel like they're personally at risk if they make a mistake at work. So creating the kind of environment where people feel like it's possible for them to make a mistake and still thrive is really at the core what psychological safety is all about.
Is it mostly around ideas or is ideas and like the work that you do at your organization, or does that also kind of extend to like personal life or like bring like, dressing a certain way, talking a certain way, whatever at work? Is it kind of extend to that as well or not so much?
Well, I mean, I think personal appearance is certainly part of being your authentic self. I think one of the things we find, though, with the organizations that we work with is that a lot of times the leadership teams have an assumption about either how welcoming or how open and real their organizations are. And then when you actually survey the employees, you get a completely different opinion or picture. And words pop up like entitled or things that the leadership team is just not clocking in on. So part of doing or defining psychological safety is just like you would define your mission statement or what your objectives are. they should be suited to your organization. I mean, there's some organizations where they say sense of humor is a really important part about what defines psychological safety in our organization. And again, it shouldn't be a mandate or a list that's forced on the group. It should be something that the group decides, because that's really how you're able to live it, or at least police it for each other in terms of interactions and how you get the job done.
Yeah. Random question is, so for people that don't know Tom in any capacity.
Oh, I can't wait to see where this goes.
Random question. No, Tom can be like a serious, like you hold people accountable. You are like very driven, very results oriented. Like I would say like you're pretty like tough boss, but everybody that works with you is like, I love Tom. Like I would like fall on a train track for him. Like all of these things. Like it's true. It's all the people. Whatever he says now, don't listen to him. I'm like,
all right, get to your question. What's your question, doctor?
How do you balance that? Like you are like when you're in meetings, you're like fired up. Like everyone get fired up. But then I think like that kind of personality, some people feel like getting results is like being that like serious person, but then their staff hate them for it. Like, how do you balance those things?
Generally, it's because I'm so proud of the people that I work with. I mean, my joy comes, and I guess this is why I do what I do, but like my joy comes from seeing people grow and develop. You know, the first time I was a CEO, I read this great book, and normally I don't advocate for books, but it said that the biggest mistake. Well, no, but it said the biggest mistake that first-time CEOs make is that they tend to gravitate towards the areas where they are most confident or where they have the most experience, and they avoid the areas that they know the least about. In my case, that was engineering. And the book said, you've got to flip that. You've got to run towards the things that make you uncomfortable. So I get gratification from helping people around the areas where they feel uncomfortable and grow. I mean, to your point, you know, not everybody loves me. And I will, in my own bio or self-confess, I'm sort of binary. So people that are high performers or high achievers or really committed and are accountable do tend to love working with me. People who do a mediocre job or are okay or are just sort of like whatever, they hate me. So it's not like they're apathetic towards me. They really hate me. So
that's funny because I haven't run into any of those people. Well, but I wonder if it's because they hate me also. I was like, I haven't run into anyone because I'm like, your opinion's terrible.
It's really easy to be supportive of people that are also curious. I mean, one of the things that has driven our friendship, but I think also drives everything that you do, is you ask questions naturally. You always want to know why. And you don't stop with the first answer if it is unsatisfying to you. So people who are naturally curious also tend to be more high performing and gravitate towards others that are similarly inclined.
Well, that's why you're on the show, Tom.
I thought you just completely exhausted the local talent pool and you were reaching out to other parts of the world.
Never.
It's funny today.
It's funny because, like, I mean, maybe along those lines, I find like the more of these we do, the more people that I'm like interested to know more about, and then you'll just like you find like all these new people that you're like, oh, this person's doing something cool. So it's still pretty hard to get on the Cackle.
No. I love, and I mean, as a viewer, I think you do a really good job of getting different viewpoints on a lot of different issues that are really, really pertinent, particularly to the Midwest ecosystem. So that's the last gratuitous compliment I'll give you in this short.
Ah, dang! Interview over. Click.
Yeah, exactly.
So, how do you feel like the concept of psychological safety and creating a culture in the workplace of safety would it like impacts diversity and diversity of thought, both demographics and of thought?
So it democratizes things in a way where everybody feels like it's an equal playing field. And for as much, particularly around startups, that we like to pretend that there isn't still sort of an overreaching bro type of culture in a lot of these organizations, there still is.
Yeah.
And so, again, people tend to design norms around their own experiences. So, part of it is pushing past what you're comfortable with yourself or what is known to you. I mean, when we started, for example, when my company started doing diversity training, okay, most of my life I spent as a straight white privileged male. Now, later in life, I got the gay card, so that gives me one small box to check on diversity. But the reality is, I didn't really feel comfortable being like this strong evangelist advocate for diversity. I sought out people that had different perspectives.
Yeah.
And now most of the programs that we deliver are informed by other people that have had way more experience than I have and are doing really cool things. So the concept of psychological safety is sort of similar. You have to reach out and in your organization to get those different perspectives. You can't design it by yourself or in a vacuum or a small group. And I know that psychological safety sounds like this sort of heavy concept, but all it's really saying is create a workplace where you want to go. Create a workplace where you feel like you can do your best work and then everybody else can do their best work too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is like I feel like everyone's had that workplace where you go and you just have that like total terrorist of a boss who's like anytime you do anything. Like I remember, well, I won't say what job, but I was like at a job that that it started to get to be that like I was like, am I a dummy? Like, do I actually not know anything about anything? Like, am I really unlikable? And I've just never realized until now. And like, I feel like when you are in a workplace where like you just feel like you can do no right, you start to like doubt yourself. And then literally everything you just crap because you're
Yeah.
like second guessing everything, like not, not doing things that seem natural. You're like doing things because you are performing and stuff like that. So I do feel like it is like, I mean, it just can really ruin your whole organization.
That's right, because what you're describing is a blaming culture, which is one of the things that's another big problem. And part of the whole concept of psychological safety is also figuring out how are you going to handle conflict in your organization. We've been living in a Zoom world during COVID, and even body language plays into this. I had a situation recently where during a large team Zoom, one executive did an eye roll on Zoom, and everybody saw it when another executive was talking. Maybe in the room it wouldn't have been noticed, but when it's right there in your face, that's
Yeah.
a problem because then you have a situation between those executives unnecessarily where you have to sort of mitigate a conflict because somebody's basically done the Zoom version of a face slap to somebody else in front of other executives. So it's
Yeah,
all the
that's
little
so
things.
awkward.
Yeah, but it's all the little things that you don't even realize that play into that. And at the bottom line on all of this, Emily, is it's about trust. So if you can foster an environment of trust in your organization, then you are probably in a pretty psychologically safe space. And the way you foster trust is you build relationships. So that means taking the
Yeah.
time to get to know the people that you work with because you are more likely to work more collaboratively or even to disagree more pleasantly with people that you know and you have a relationship with. And that's
Mhm.
harder in this sort of distance environment that we're in now, which is probably another reason why this topic is sort of bubbling up in some of the trainings we're doing, because you don't have the ability to create really meaningful relationships over Zoom.
Yeah, yeah, it is a lot harder. I was also random side note is I was also talking to someone about like lighting and like sitting in darkness and stuff when you're talking to other people on Zoom and how hard it is to even like make a connection like that when you're talking to someone that's like in the shadows and you're like, I feel like I'm just talking to the computer and not to a person.
or people that have their really cool virtual backgrounds, but they look like ghosts because they keep bleeding in and out of backwards.
I move around too much for something like that. I would never, my hands would be all over. You would be able to see the whole room behind me because I'd be like this all the time.
Correct. It'd be like, does she have two ears because her head's moving too much? So,
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Tell me about, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you one more thing is, do you find that like it would be easier to kind of create culture within an organization if you're a small organization staying small versus like a tech company typically is like high growth, you know, is looking to like acquire other companies, grow larger, like they're trying to go to like 900 employees in a couple of years. Like how do you maintain psychological safety or like any sort of culture in your company when you're like growing that fast?
Same principles apply. I mean, some of the issues that we deal with a lot are M&A issues related to companies that are acquiring other organizations. And the biggest reason why those types of acquisitions fail is because nobody thinks about the people enough. They focus on, oh, this technology is a great addition to our portfolio, or they have this product that's going to supercharge our product. Yeah. And they don't think about how they're going to integrate those people. So it is really literally the same type of approach. I mean, I don't want to give away any sort of like, you know, trade secrets here, but a lot of the skills building that we do is the same advice that I would give you if you're building any type of relationship. It's about active listening. It's about being able to play back. It's about being able to create sort of that sense of empathy with the other individuals. And whether you are at a company that has 9,000 employees or 9, if you're not paying attention to how people are feeling about either getting the job done or understanding why they're doing the job they're doing or being able to connect that to larger objectives, you're probably not building a healthy organization.
Yeah, it seems to like a lot of it comes from like the top down, where if the leadership team is really on board with you know, what kind of culture they want in their organization and what types of relationships they think they need to model for the employees, like then it's just nightmarish. Like
right, but like then think about first-time CEOs or entrepreneurs where there's already this healthy dose of imposter syndrome where I'm trying to act like I've got it together for everybody all the time. And if you're putting that much energy into sort of this, I've got this mindset, as opposed to what I would recommend, which is nurturing your vulnerability and being comfortable saying, I don't know, but I'll go find the answer, you probably have a better chance of building that kind of culture. Yeah. But if you're spending all day trying to impress either your investors or your potential customers, acting like you've got everything figured out, eventually you're probably going to hit a wall.
Yeah, that's a good point. So a lot of businesses right now are failing and are struggling or have been trying to.
You're giving me like the happiest topics to talk about. Thanks.
I know. We talked about
this going,
like casual conversation about serious.
That wasn't enough of a downbeat. So let me go someplace sadder now. Okay, Oprah. Yes. So businesses are struggling and failing. What's the question?
But like, I think also like a lot of entrepreneurs have been like navigating and like trying to navigate for like 18 months now. And people are getting, I've noticed like people are getting a lot more just like exhausted, where like a lot of people are like, the pandemic is nearing the end. And I was like, yeah, except I think right now it's kind of nearing this like weird phase where like everyone's just very tired, but it's not actually done. And we're all just going to be like slogging through it exhausted. Like, so like, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are kind of like really struggling right now, just as like a life coach person?
Okay, not a life coach.
I was like, help a girl out, Tom Frank.
No, I'm a business coach. Life coaches are different. Just because I've been your life coach.
I know. Yeah, I was like, well, in your other hat of
no, look. I mean, number one, best advice is to really be careful with whatever resources you have at your disposal until you sort of know where this road is taking you. Number two, be as creative as you can in terms of managing those resources. I mean, we have properties back in Michigan where we had a lot of tenants that couldn't pay their rent during COVID. And that meant we couldn't pay our bank loan on the properties that they were renting during COVID. And we got very creative with people around ways to sort of keep them going that weren't necessarily in our best short-term interest, but ultimately, hopefully, we'll be rewarded in the long term because we did what we could to keep them alive. So I would be looking for opportunities if I was an entrepreneur to pay it forward with people. Maybe you give your customers more of a break if you can. And also just being honest. Be honest with the people around you. I mean, let people know what the struggles are. Let people know what you think your priorities are and how you're trying to address those. And again, be vulnerable, because trying to keep it all like I got this under control, particularly now, is going to make your head explode. It'll make your cackle hands look almost like slow motion.
What's so funny is we actually just had someone reach out to us not too long ago that was like wanted to give me some unsolicited advice that they didn't think I should do this. Like, hello everybody anymore. And they were like, I don't know why you do that. It's just really annoying. I was like, okay, well, I'm not watching your show then when you have one. I was like, I don't know. They just do that. Oh my god.
You know, I was on I was on actually twice in the last couple of weeks. I was on Mike Rowe's podcast, and the comments that people wrote, and of course I started responding, and I'm like, and Mike is like, don't, you'll just drive yourself crazy. It'll be a rabbit hole. There will always be people that are scrolling through Facebook that will have an opinion about everything from your hair to your hands to what's on the wall behind you. So
I was like, I must be famous now if they care so much. I was like, my biggest fan.
You keep doing you. So what do you like most about doing this? Do you like, I mean, do you feel like you're helping people? What service are you providing with the show?
So I feel like it started out as something where I was like, oh, it helps us to have conversations with people in the actual community that helps inform our research. So like the research, if you're doing it in like in a vacuum, it just sucks. Like you just do terrible. If people watching don't realize that, like that, any research organizations that's kind of doing it in the vacuum of a computer and a spreadsheet is probably not great. And so we started kind of doing those conversations like that. And also just because I'm an extreme extrovert. And so like, if I don't get to talk to a bunch of people, I'm just going to perish in a terrible way. But now I feel like it's been really great because I think we have a lot of like really interesting voices we're able to amplify. And like when I see something like in the data that's like, oh, these companies are like really cool things they're working on, really interesting things to say, you're able to do that versus like a lot of shows, I think, where if they're not as in the community, they are just like kind of selecting people to feature that are like the same people all the time. You just see the same people all the time and you're like, I don't care about them anymore. So.
I agree with you about amplifying the voices. I think another thing that you are doing with this is that you're breaking down artificial categories. So, you know, what really is the line between small business or entrepreneur? And, you know, we used to have sort of all of these like preconceived notions. I remember people would walk around campus and say, I have a startup. And I'd be like, no, you have a PowerPoint presentation, and the person that just opened a barber shop has a startup. And I think one of the things that you're doing, particularly with the showcasing of small businesses, is letting people see how much of the advice or the information, or the similarities, and how it's applicable across many different business applications.
Oh yeah.
Good on you.
I like how this is coming with a good dose of pep up Emily time.
Isn't that what you put in the private chat I was supposed to do?
Yeah, I was like, if you could please compliment me a lot, that would be great. And you're like, I hate you.
No, you know me, no gratuitous compliments, only if they're real. So
this is true. Yeah, this is true. So what is on the horizon for you, both personally, professionally?
Personally, I'm on my way to Budapest and Lisbon in 8 or 9 days.
Oh my gosh. I
Um,
can get ready to see all those pictures and grow a healthy hatred of you.
Monday, I'm flying to Los Angeles. One of our clients, hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying this, is a new women's athletic shoe company called Seish, which was founded by Allison Felix, who just won, I think, her 10th and 11th medal, making her the most medaled track and field star in history at the Olympics, passing Carl Lewis.
Oh,
And
awesome.
and what I love about what she's building in their company is, again, it's a women-focused company. It's focused on giving voice to segments of the population that have less of a voice, and it's really advocating for community. It's not just a shoe company, and so those are the kinds of clients that we really enjoy working with,
Yeah,
and
that's great.
hopefully we'll keep doing that. Although I love coming back to the Midwest and seeing you. So if your Midwestern audience is looking for emerging leadership training or workshops on general health and wellness, or go to our website and check us out, because I would love to come back and be able to train in Michigan. It would be great fun. And
Yeah, that
hopefully,
would be awesome.
an ROI. So
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And for those of you that also don't know, Tom Frank is originally from the Midwest and all of these things. So you're not just a fly in from California kind of guy.
although, if you were actively listening when you asked for my bio, I mentioned that I was from Cincinnati, Ohio.
But people, I think, just think California people, oh, you're a California person. You're just coming in from, like, I think that's a big Midwest thing that we see. So
I love the Midwest. I will always be from the Midwest. So,
yay. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I like that we got to talk and catch up.
You were expecting that we'd go completely off the rails and somehow.
Yep. I'm actually very proud of us right now. There was no swearing, I don't think.
I don't think there was any. No.
Zero nudity, zero swearing, zero.
Okay.
We're good.
Well,
We're
there's a
doing
food
really
for
good.
everything, and won't that leave your audience wondering? Maybe not this time, but there is still photographic evidence. So, on that note, no, you know what? Again, I love what you're doing. I love that you can let me talk about things like psychological safety that really do matter for organizations and building organizations. So, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts. And then we'll share links to Ascend and to Tom and all of those things in the comments. And then, yeah, and then we'll see you guys all on Monday, where we're featuring 3 small businesses as our special edition of the Cackle. So that will be very exciting. Okay,
Perfect.
see you all on Monday.